Today I'm talking with Sam Culver from the People's Food and Farming Alliance. Sam has had an interesting journey from deputy head to now a very different path. So, if you could just give us a little bit of a rundown of your journey, that would be really great.
Yeah, so I went into teaching in the early 2000s, always wanted to work with children from a young age. And originally wanted to go down the educational psychology route, but you had to teach first. And as soon as I stepped into a classroom, I absolutely loved it. Loved working with the children, the awe and wonder that they bring to the everyday was great. So I did that. I was a class teacher, working in various year groups from children who were kind of 5 or 6 right up to the end of primary school, age 11, and gradually worked my way into more sort of school leadership positions. I've worked in 3 primary schools across 2 cities, and I spent the last 10 or 11 years in school leaderships being deputy heads and assistant heads, one of them in a particularly large inner city school in Bristol.
Wow. And how did you find it?
Well, I went into teaching like most people do, with an absolute love of wanting to work with children and impart knowledge. And it started out like that. It was fantastic. But I think, I don't know, there was a government change. Obviously, the Tories came in and there was a massive change with curriculum, a huge drive for academia took over. And suddenly it was more important to teach children about kings and queens of England than it was to develop their self-awareness or empathy of others or communication skills. And I think quite early on, I realised that the curriculum was perhaps not drawing out the best in children. And it's quite interesting, actually. I remember talking to quite an experienced teacher. I was about 4 or 5 years into teaching. And she said to me, you know what? The children just don't laugh like they used to. And I think that was the beginning of me looking at things with slightly different eyes.
Oh.
Yeah, it was quite a sad one. I really remember that. And I thought, well, there's one way to change that, and that's to perhaps step into leadership and create the environment you do want to see for children. Now, don't get me wrong, I was really lucky. I worked with some amazing heads who were really, worked from the heart. But there's only so much you can do within a certain system. And it's the framework within which you work that really ends up dictating what direction it goes in, unfortunately.
Yeah, because there seems to be a push towards testing, exams, and there's no like Sir Ken Robertson. He was a big person who
Yeah.
changed my because he said, "Why is there so much focus on the mind and none on the body when our body
Yeah.
can see us through every day?"
Yeah.
And yes, and there's maths, English, no other testing. Like, what about dance? What about singing, creativity, art?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a big buzzword around, child centered education quite early on in my teaching days. But that just seems to have gone out of the window, really, unfortunately. And it's less about the children, definitely more about testing. I've got a child actually in reception. I've got 2 children. I've got 2 girls. I've got one that's just left primary school, so she's 11. And I've got one that's just started primary school, so she's 4.5. And her classmates have just been tested to see, where they are across various different subjects in their maths or English, their understanding of the world, art, their physical development. And there's no recognition for the individual. There's no recognition for their individual circumstances or life experiences or personal interests or even cultural background. So if you're a child that comes into this country and English is a second language, but you've been mainly speaking your mother tongue at home, which you should be, then obviously you're going to be graded down for your language understanding and language development. And it's a completely unfair system. It's a one size fits all testing model. And we're individual human beings that just aren't, robots or carbon copies of each other,
Yeah.
you know.
And we could be learning from those children that are new to England. I remember being fascinated when someone came from New Zealand. I actually asked him if he lived in a hut. No, no, it was South Africa. He was like, no, I lived in a house.
Yeah.
Um, but equally, we didn't know. I was probably 9 or 10, and wouldn't it be amazing to have someone stand up and say, "This is what I've just come from, and this is what my family home,"
Yeah.
and describing it, and then we'd feel more connected to those people.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that's the problem, I think, with the curriculum and the school system. There's just no room to go off on a tangent. There's no room for the children to direct their learning, to explore something new, to have the time to understand where a new classmate may have come from, let alone build relationships or make time for that child to feel settled and part of this already cohesive class that might be really scary for them to enter. Um, and the frustration is that the teachers would love to do that,
Yeah.
and the children would love to do that. And I'm pretty sure most school leaders would love
Mm.
for their schools to be like that. But because of the testing, because of the Ofsted regulations, and that kind of top-down monitoring, there's no room to breathe, and I think really it can create quite a toxic environment because of the pressures that are put upon the leadership team that then filters down through to the class teachers and eventually the children.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I know, and you look at the Finnish system, and they do 20 or 25 hours a week, don't they, up until the age of 7, 8. And I love that because they're free to head off in the afternoon to do horse riding or whatever passion they want to. And the
Yeah.
school is just an environment to have those facilities that we don't have in our own homes, like science. Um, and it seems that it's all doable, it's being done. So why can't we do it?
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I'm not, yeah, it's interesting looking at those models because what they do is they don't really have formative learning until the age of 7. So they really take into consideration a child's developmental age and what they're capable of. So the skills that they focus on in the lead up to that are things like empathy or listening or communication or sharing. And to me, those aren't even just skills that are foundation in a child or human being's life. We need to be working on those well into the future. I mean, there's plenty of adults I know out there that haven't mastered those kind of skills, you know? And to me and my family, we value those kind of things more than perhaps the traditional academic subjects. And so I think from a value base, I was starting to really struggle with what was going on in my work day to day. And I realised at that point that maybe I needed to make a change, I think.
And what did you do then? How, yes, where did you go?
Yeah, well, I was quite fortunate. I was able to go down part time around the time of having my second child. So I was already a step out the door, really, and able to explore that. And I've got a really supportive partner who was seeing how unhappy I was in a system and a job that I used to just adore. But I mean, I'd have children coming into my office crying every day, children not coping with the pressures of school. The level of need is going up and the teachers weren't able to manage that. And it wasn't their fault. It's because of the pressures of the job. And then I'd have staff members in my office crying. And I just thought, how can I can't support these people and give them what they want. The system's not going to let me do that. And so luckily I was able to leave, and I had a period of about a year where I could just sort of settle, spend a bit of time with the children, work out what I needed to do some volunteering, support my partner. And during that time, I came across the People's Health Alliance.
Mm.
And I looked at setting up a health hub in my local area. And so the People's Health Alliance have a vision to set up community hubs, originally driven for medical reasons, so that people can set up a medical base to support local community and their needs in the absence of the NHS and the difficulties that is obviously that we've seen happening in recent years. And I was very excited about that. So I got involved with setting up a local health hub in my area. And then I saw on Telegram that they were launching a food and farming alliance. And I'm really passionate about growing food. I've always been very passionate about what we eat as a family. And I believe that food is a great preventative measure for getting ill, etc., etc. And I love community, and I missed that. I missed working in community. I missed working with families and building something. And they were really passionate about community growing. So I kind of put my hand up and stepped forward. And I've been with the PFFA ever since, really. It started gathering those initial ideas. And I guess I've just grown with the organisation. I'm really lucky now to be working within something completely different.
Yeah.
So, it fills my heart every day, really.
And what is the ethos? Is it really to encourage people to grow their own veg, or is it connecting farmers? What is the whole vision?
Well, it's really about food independence. It's about individuals having more control and understanding on their food systems, and that kind of falls under two parts. There's an element of being able to grow your own, or be as autonomous as you can in your food production, whether that is just growing microgreens on your windowsill because that's all you're interested in, or can manage, through to working with people that are building some incredible self-sufficient communities that are really autonomous in everything that they do, food production, but also health, education, things like that. So we really want to promote and support people on that journey and perhaps push them to the next level. So if it is only microgreens, well, how could you maybe now look at growing a few other different veg in the space that you've got? Or if you've got a great allotment, how about looking at taking that into the community? How can you make a community growing project? So helping people take the next step on that journey. But we're also keen to support people look at where they might get their supplementary food sources from, so the things you can't produce yourself. Not everyone's got a dairy farm in their garden, or a field of wheat that they can produce a load of bread from. So how can they connect with local producers and go direct, to step away from supermarkets that are very self-serving? Who knows where they get their products from, who knows what's in their products, and who actually gets the money and the profit? Well, they do. The producers, the people that do put in the hard work, they don't get that.
Okay.
And the consumers can't really trust the quality of what they are eating.
Mhm.
So we are supporting stronger connections between local producers and communities so that they can access that.
Mhm. Because, of course, if we all took responsibility for what we're eating, then that would help reduce health problems, because a lot of the supermarket food is highly processed, lots of stuff added to it, sugar, salt, um, and even the organic food I've found out recently, they are allowed sprays on them. And some of the farmers I've spoken to, they say they don't like the organic label because of the sprays that they allow to use.
I
So,
think, yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, there's a lot of, and it's quite a strict, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, essentially. And there's people out there that are actually producing some great produce that's naturally produced using traditional methods, chemical free, but because they can't tick certain boxes on the organic standards, and they can't get that. So we
yeah.
have looked at maybe an alternative accreditation system as well, that we would be keen to develop and work with farmers and producers on. So that's something that we hope to look at in the future.
Great. Because I've found, since setting up the pub, like a lot of people have kind of come away from alcohol. So a few people said, "Are you going to serve alcohol?" And so I've gone to the alcohol producers and found out that they're actually really passionate about the environment as well, and really care about their product. They're not just wanting people to go and get smashed; they're just actually wanting people to enjoy a drink with friends in a relaxing environment. And then that sort of got me thinking that about where it's the traceability. So everything you eat, you should go to the greengrocers and say, where do you get your food from? Because they might be getting it from a non-organic accredited farmer who doesn't have the money to put that label, but doesn't put any sprays on, for example. And it's just taking account, really, isn't it? And saying, okay, right, I'm going to buy from
Mm.
this and come away. And so I'm going to ask questions and just do my
Yeah,
research.
totally agree with you actually, and I think it's quite interesting that point you made about the alcohol and just it's there's a shift in culture, isn't there? There's a shift in culture of how we consume, whether that's getting smashed, and the need to escape because we're making so many well, hopefully we're working towards making choices in our day to day. We don't have that kind of need anymore to escape
Yeah.
and get obliterated. But also just to have a different viewpoint of how we're consuming and what we're consuming and how much we're consuming. And
Mhm.
that comes down to the food and the drink and where it comes from and how it's produced and how much do we really need and all of those things. It's quite a shift in mindset. And I think also something that we've come across that is going to be probably a bit of a long game is having to shift that mindset of how we buy as well, because cost of living crisis and the likes of these budget supermarkets mean that, your food shop can be quite a smaller chunk of your weekly budget now, which is what people need. And if you're going to start looking to buy local and go to farm shops and things like that, that's really expensive. It's a massive
Mm.
shift financially, and having to take the time out because the convenience element as well of a supermarket. So you've got the financial and the convenience.
Yeah.
But we're working on solutions for that. We're looking at supporting people to develop buying groups so they can increase their spending power that way, and food hubs and things like that. So we're looking for solutions. We're quite solution focused. We recognise the difficulties in that shift of culture and mindset.
Okay. And where can people find you? Have you got your own website?
Yeah, okay. So you can find us at the pffa.org. We're also on Telegram, the People's Food and Farming Alliance. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you should find us across main socials and our website. And also, obviously, the People's Health Alliance, our sister organisation, really cross strong links there. You can find them too.
Thank you. Oh, thanks so much for your time. And we're
Thank
going
you.
to carry on chatting, but thanks for your time with rendleshamradio.com.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that was really interesting. And what I also learned is that I think before the 1950s, 50% of our budget went on food. Now
Yeah.
that's down to between 10 and 20. I think it's about 20. And you think we're buying other stuff. We're saving money for Netflix, for our phones, of course, a big expenditure, for gadgets, for shoes, clothes. Our children want. Yeah, everybody wants new clothes. Primark is just a crime, I think, that shop. Um, because why aren't we buying like second-hand clothes? And just every school used to have a second-hand shop. So why haven't we got little second-hand shops or groups together to
Yeah.
save our money on the things that we don't necessarily need? We might want more clothes, but we don't need them, and sacrificing what we actually need, which is good quality food, for stuff that we don't.
I
Um,
couldn't agree with you more, but
it's
you could say it's part of a bigger picture. You could say that it's people trying, we're being distracted and our attention and our money and resources and energy are put into things that aren't really going to benefit us, like our food and our health, which then, if our food and health, if our food deteriorates and then our health deteriorates, and then that really supports a pharmaceutical industry out there, doesn't it? So, you could go down that route, but I do think that there's a lot of conditioning around materialism and of these things that are so unimportant. We're having some pretty interesting conversations with our 11-year-old at the moment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because equally, I think it's okay for young girls, like my daughter spends ages on her makeup to look natural.
Same, same.
And I said, you look really beautiful, but it's taken you hours to look like that. My son, that laugh. But now I think it's an art, it's an expression of art. And she's not looking fake, she's not looking completely manufactured. She's looking very lovely. And that isn't an art. And I think it's okay to actually look want to look nice, especially at you're that age. But for that not to be the focus, to think, okay, I've had a healthy day today, and I'm going to spend a bit of time looking nice. It's all right. It's getting everything into balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was brought up, that presentation was quite important, how you present yourself through your words, how you present yourself through your actions, and how you present yourself visually. And it wasn't the be all and end all, but it was something to be mindful of. So I'm okay with that. But I think if, like you say, the makeup started looking kind of ridiculous or over the top, or the clothes, we talk about the sexualization of clothes in young girls in this house quite a lot, me and my partner, and he feels probably more strongly about it than me in a way, but that's because I have been a teenage girl and I can kind of relate. um but yeah, I think you've just got to keep such a close eye on it, haven't you? And a little bit's okay. It's just when it starts creeping in, like you say, that you've got to maybe step in and make sure that that
Yeah.
doesn't go too far.
And what's interesting also is that so my daughter's into performing. She's doing a BTEC in performing arts, and
Great.
we're looking at drama school. But what's interesting is that now we've bought a house with two other people, and we're living as a sort of a family of eight. We're a family of six. That we have to generally carry her because of the workload that the college is doing. And she loves it. But I said to her, this isn't right. Where's the time to be? Where's the time to grow your own veg? Where's the time to get, grounded and connected? So
Mm,
we do make sure she walks the dogs and have some time. But I just think, where in our school curriculum and our colleges or in our drama schools, where is the time where they're saying, go out, go to the park, look at the sky, just meditate or something. And that's what
mm,
frustrates me about any education. There's
mm,
just no focus on what's going in our bodies. The food at these places. Like when I went to
um,
our local secondary
mm,
school, I was like, firstly, the people behind the counter are vastly overweight. So that's not kind of like, I'm like, nothing about being overweight, but it's just like, what food are we providing our young people to give them the
mm,
best, healthiest start? And it's pizzas and it's hot dogs and sausage
yeah.
rolls, croissants, pain au chocolats. And you just think,
Yeah.
it should
It's,
green
it's
smoothies.
it's difficult, isn't it? I think, when society reflects that. So, I think back to what you were saying about children being brought up in an education system where there's just no space to be, to stop, to reflect, to ground, to connect. But society reflects that. And I think if you take that back to, even be working as a teacher or in a school, if you were ill for more than 48 hours, people start raising their eyebrows. If you got in just before the children, it's like, well, why weren't you here? It was an unsaid kind of cultural code that you should be working your ass off, basically, for no reward and no recognition. And I just think that's a real sickness in the society, that we have to give more of ourselves to our jobs than anything else. You give more of yourself to your job than you do to your children, your family, or even to yourself. And we're
Yeah,
starting to indoctrinate that in our children from a very young age in schooling.
yeah,
It's awful. So I think it's important to have these conversations, and I think it's important to have these conversations with other people that might not necessarily think in the same way or have these conclusions themselves, so that then as families we can create that balance at home, like you're doing. Take your shoes off, come on, let's go on the grass. I have to tell you, actually, my youngest had a friend over yesterday. She's the same age, 4, and then they were like, can we go outside in the garden? And I'm like, yeah, go. And her friend said, you've got to put your shoes on, to my little one. Ina, you must put your shoes on. And my little one was like, why? And I was like, why? You can't go on the grass without your shoes. And I was almost horrified. I was like, no, you must go on the grass without your shoes. I just
oh
thought,
gosh,
wow,
okay.
why? It was really interesting. Really
Yes, it
interesting.
is, isn't it? I know. And my nephew and niece, when they were on sand on their bare feet, they couldn't bear it. So they had to be like completely naked with just wellies. Then it was,
It's always a good look, I think.
I know. I know. Um, and when you experience it yourself, because we've got used to having flip-flops on in summer, haven't we? And then feeding the ground is quite foreign. And when you get used to it, you're like, God, this feels so much better. I feel still, I feel, yes.
Yeah,
And then it goes down to energy, this being connected to the earth, isn't it? And all of
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, it's great to have these conversations, and in our home we talk about how we can provide a balance to the world they're experiencing outside. We don't homeschool at the moment. It's something we talk about, and it's a choice we'll make with our children, and we'll try and work it out. I think the children would love to do a half and half, really, but schools just are not supportive of that, unfortunately. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping things will change. We talk about big changes on the horizon, and I hope so. But until we can't keep looking out for the change, can we? We have to kind of make those
yeah,
changes ourselves and take that power to ourselves to make the changes that we need. And that's difficult, and you've got
yeah.
to be brave, haven't you? But I think we've got to start thinking that way.
You have, because the system can change if people want that change and they stand up. Like I always think the only thing that has to change is the headmaster's attitude to Ofsted. And just saying as a group, because all the schools compete with each other in our local area.
Yeah.
And I think, well, why don't you look at the school that isn't competing, that is actually getting really high Ofsted grades, but is actually more focused on the well-being of the children than any other school in our local area. They get Ofsteded more than any other school in the local area, so they're on
Mm.
them all the time. But I just think, why not join together, and then you become a force that and say we're not after academic achievements. We're after the whole person. What's it called? Is it a more holistic approach?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I'm not sure if you heard the sad news that came from Reading in the recent months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually worked with that head teacher. We were lead teachers together in Reading. So that's where I started my teaching career.
Oh
And
gosh.
she was an incredible mathematician. So she would lead on maths and support schools in the local area, and I did the English side of things.
Mm,
And and I've got friends who are in leadership positions, heads and deputies in Reading, and when Ofsted called on a few of their schools to say they were there to inspect, a few of the teachers said, "No, we're not having you." They tried to stand up, they tried to pull together, but the local authority got involved, intervened, and the inspections went ahead. But what has happened is the heads have decided to get together, seek some legal advice, and write to Ofsted challenging their procedures. And it's great. So you're right, the people coming together is super important. It's just so awful it had to come to this.
yes.
Someone had to take their life. Two, children had to lose their mothers. A school had to lose an incredibly inspirational leader for
Oh,
this to happen. And I find that heartbreaking. And I think enough now,
yeah.
enough.
That is just horrendous. And I think again takes down to sort of personal sovereignty. So if you're working for Ofsted, if you're in that establishment, start questioning it. And for the people who are still in the school system, I always said to my friends, if you're in the school system, just challenge it. Don't do the homework. Explain to the teachers that you won't be doing the homework. I'm a bit of a coward because I like to do what I'm told because it causes me a lot of stress. So the only, well, I don't like what to do what I'm told. I do what I'm told, but inside I'm like, ugh. And so I actually came away. I said, I can't do this. I'm going to pull you out of school. And but other parents are like, no, they won't be doing the homework. And I know one boy who's actually he caused his mum a lot of stress, but she said, oh, he some days he doesn't want to go to school because they're not teaching him the topics that he's interested in. And I'm like, well, he's creating the education for him, and
Yeah,
so he attends the lessons he wants to and doesn't go down well, but
yeah.
taking the power in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice would be for people that are unhappy with certain things that are happening in their children's school or the way it's going for their families, is to try and have some open dialogue. Go to the head, go to the deputy. I would go to the top, so to speak. You know, it is a hierarchical system, and I would have some open and honest and try and be non-confrontational. Try and work as a team to find a solution, because I think you'll find that a majority of people working in schools do have children's best interest at heart. They do want the children to enjoy their learning, and they do want it to be a safe, stimulating, fun environment. But we have to remember that they're working within a framework that is so restrictive and dictates exactly what needs to be taught and how. There's such little freedom, but work with the school, and hopefully you'll find at least a middle ground, I would have thought. My
Because
doorbell, sorry.
I found teachers are some of the most entrepreneurial people out there, and they've got a huge range of skills. They can create a 2 hour or 1 hour, 2 hour lesson and have everybody engaged. I can't do that.
They're,
Um,
yeah, incredible. They are absolutely incredible. The good ones, yeah, worth their weight in gold for sure. Um,
yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult, I think. And there does need to be some changes, because we're changing as a society. Children's needs, families' needs are changing. And this is an old system. It's built on the old industrial revolution. Let's create a workforce kind of thing, isn't it? And the three R's. Not a lot's changed, really.
No, and I think also, like, I don't understand why I mean, maybe there should be some local governing body to make sure the schools aren't abusing children, they're really encouraging them. But that I see is all that's needed, because I want to say, okay, my child's academic, so that school might be relevant. That school focuses on movement and the arts, so that school. Whereas instead, they're all like becoming quite similar. So you just think, well, I'll just go to the one that's nearest to me, or their friends are going to.
Yeah, you're quite right. That would be amazing if schools could specialise in what they offered. That would be incredible. And there was allowed some sort of freedom of movement, and we weren't all tied to catchment areas and things like that.
Mm,
Because that, I
yeah.
don't think that helps as such. But they're really into impact measures. They really want to know sort of what impact they're making. This is kind of what they're always talking about. What impact are you having in the classroom? What impact are you having on the individual?
Mm,
What impact are you having? But the measures are always very academic and test based. Where are the impact measures for a child's happiness or enthusiasm or empathy, or you know
that's true.
it's not, they talk about having values in the curriculum, but I think they're just bolt on extras to tick another bloody box, to be honest with you.
Mm.
you know
Yes, we ran children's nurseries, and before we sold them, the last Ofsted inspection, they got rid of the satisfactory. So it was either outstanding, which they said you won't get outstanding because we are not allowed to give away many outstandings. Okay, well, that's very demoralising for the staff.
um,
Um, we've done away with the satisfactory, so you'll either be outstanding, which you can't really get, good, or unsatisfactory. And apparently the fire extinguisher was, I can't remember what was about the fire extinguisher, but she was crying and she said, I'm going to have to give you a good because of that, because she needed an excuse why we couldn't give an outstanding. So the girls are in tears because they've worked so hard. It's demoralizing because you haven't got the outstanding, and the Ofsted inspector is crying as well. And you think, what is this system? Yeah, it's just bonkers.
I
Um,
think from that kind of, that sort of monitoring system of Ofsted all the way down, it's not serving, it's not fit for purpose, and it's not serving its community. I'm sure there are plenty of Ofsted inspectors that really hate their job because they're having to downgrade schools. There's an agenda there to get everybody in a multi-academy trust by 2030. So there's quite a few outstanding, and if you're no longer an outstanding school and you're not part of a multi-academy trust, then you are kind of you're forced to become part of one. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of kind of hidden agendas at play within the education system and the monitoring of that, as there are in many other areas.
Why should we be wary about these trusts? I don't know enough
Because
about.
they're not always run by people who are well experienced, people who have had a lot of time in education. They're almost run like businesses now, and it's a business model that kind of doesn't look at an individual school and an individual community and the needs of those community. It kind of looks at it's several businesses that fall within that trust, and how it can manage the money best, and how it can manage the results the best, and I think it just takes away that individual approach for a school. And you could have several different schools with very different needs under one academy trust. Well, how is the people leading that going to really understand the individual needs? You're not really. Um, yeah, and there's been stories of some pretty successful ones where they've been led by people who really know what they're doing and have got a recognisable and admirable history in education, but there's plenty that haven't. So
Okay.
that's something to be mindful of, I think.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of people on here want to home ed, but they can't because, or they feel that they can't. And I see another way is just connecting little networks. So there might be someone who's got grown-up children who've moved away and want to be around younger children who could help with a mum who has got age difference children. And me and Casey, there's three families that tend to sort of connect and help each other. And I always see that you just need three families: one to be the teacher, one to sort of get on with the cooking, and one to look after the little ones. Um, and
Yeah.
um, and that's enough. And then but I think we're so sort of again disconnected with our local community. There might be someone sat in their home on their own feeling lonely, but we don't know how to reach out, and we're feeling overstretched. Um,
Yeah, I think so. And maybe a fear about what to teach and how to teach. And I'm not a teacher, I can't do this. But actually, you know, learning's learning. You teach your child from the moment it's born, don't you? We're all teachers.
yes,
We just have to we just have to decide what we want our children to learn. And if it's more academic subjects, then it's something that you can look into together, and
exactly. Yeah,
there's
because now my daughter's sitting GCSE maths, and I feel like unfortunately her teacher's not being very good at the college, so I've had to pull my math skills up to
going.
fill up. But, because we're sitting there learning together, it's actually been quite yeah, really good for both of us.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine actually. Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing I think what I find frustrating is that home ed parents they also so a lot of people say, oh, I couldn't home educate because I can't bear, I couldn't bear to be around my kids that long. And I'm like, well, maybe that's because I know, I'm like, oh, makes me feel really sad when they say that. Or they'd be at each other's throats or something like that. And I think if you take all the stresses away of life, don't rush to get them up in the morning, don't push them to have homework in the night, your child will change and they'll be a lot easier. And, it is stressful being a home ed parent, but I find your children, you have to rely on your children a bit more to do the washing up, to do the cooking, and they love it. They've got a purpose. And instead, we've got to go, oh, I used to think I can't possibly get them to help tidy the house because then I'm failing as a parent. And
Okay.
then, so
Really?
yeah, yes. And then I read the continuum concept, and she realized from a very, very young age, from the age of about two, children love a purpose, and
Mm.
it's okay to get them a little broom or a little, time hoovering, and they
But
feel
it's a skill
valued
as
as
well, isn't it? If you want a kind of relatively clean and tidy home, then why not? I was teaching my 10-year-old how to clean a bathroom. She needed to be shown. I don't think I was ever shown any of that. I worked it out for myself in the end, but it would have been easier if my mum had sort of come on, let's do this together. And I got an idea of what I needed to do. I think that's part of the learning,
It is. Yes, because then you become an adult. I mean, my friend's married someone and she said it's like I've got another child because he takes his coat off and it lands on the floor. And that's where it stays.
No comment.
I know.
Yeah,
And my brother lived with him and his room was just chaos. And you think, at what point did your parents forget to teach you how to put
yeah,
um, stuff away? But he was
yeah,
very
yeah.
well read.
Oh, that's all right then. Maybe you could read a book about it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll be uploading this to YouTube.
Right.
And yeah, and we're looking forward to sort of connecting a lot more because we're joining forces, aren't we? And
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
because your vision and our vision is just identical, really. And
Yeah. So
yeah,
moving forward, we've got the People's Health Alliance and the People's Food and Farming Alliance, but really it comes under the umbrella of the People's Alliance. And our vision really is for there to be community hubs, as many as possible up and down the country, that really support their communities with their food needs and their health needs, but their education needs. So what you're building where you are is quite an inspiration for us. And so we're really looking forward to learning more about that and sharing that with our community and seeing how other communities can take what they want from what you're doing and replicate that in their own way to meet their own needs wherever they are. So, yeah, it's really great. I feel quite honoured and blessed to meet people such as yourself and your team and everyone there and other people up and down the country that are doing things. I was in Glastonbury at Crops Not Shops and saw their self-sufficiency set up over there. And, it's a real honour and an inspiration for me too. So, yeah, incredible. So thank you so much for your time as well.
well, well, thank you. Yes, it gives you a lot of hope that there's some great people doing inspirational stuff when you chat to you, because yes, you're in touch with a lot more people than I am at the moment, which is lovely too.
We're all
Um,
the same network. We're all the same network.
exactly. All right. Thanks for your time again, and we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.